Next session, which deals with children and youth affairs. Before I invite the movers of motions 12 to 17, can I just emphasise the necessity to ensure that delegates actually state their name and branch or section when moving a motion. And I'm calling on the Castleknock branch to move motion number 12. Is there anybody from Castleknock branch? Motion number 13 from the Navan Road branch. Motion number 14 from the Tallaght South branch in Dublin South West. Pamela.
Just wait a minute when people are leaving the room.
Thank you, comrades. Pamela Kearns of the Templeogue branch. I'm actually in my comfort zone here because I've been working in childcare now for the last 16 years, and while there have been significant changes, and it is great and it is improving, the emphasis for educators to upskill.
Pamela, just a moment. Can you leave the room quietly if you're leaving, delegates, please? And allow the speakers. And can I ask the stewards to close the door as quickly as possible? Just a moment, Pamela.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry for interrupting you.
No, thank you. Just add on the time.
Now, Pamela.
Bear in mind it's a childcare motion. I should have my tambourine and just shake it and tell them I'll put the fingers on the lips. Anyway, to go back to what I was saying, I'm working in childcare now for 16 years, and there have been terrific improvements within the area. But the emphasis on the educators to upskill, whilst it's laudable and it's great, it's also expensive. And childcare workers are paid a very, very small wage. I mean, I know a number of my colleagues who have degrees and they're on less than €10 an hour, which is ridiculous. They put in years and they spent 8 or 9 grand on a degree. I know it's hard for parents because the cost of childcare is expensive, but that's not trickling through to the actual provider. And as I said, I'm happy that we have to upskill, but it's not been recognised as a true profession. Recently, I had a colleague of mine, and this is a factual story. She has very high qualifications in childcare. She's a qualified Montessori teacher. She opens in the morning at 8 o'clock. She takes preschool children. She drops them to school. Then she has a preschool class. She has an afternoon Montessori class, and she does after school. And one of the parents was asking her there a few weeks ago, her own 2 children are older now, and she actually asked her, now that your children are older, are you going to get a job? Now, I mean, this girl is a highly qualified childcare professional. It's not been recognised either as a profession or through its remuneration. So I'm very proud to be a part of the Big Start campaign, which has actually been organised through SIPTU. So I would ask you to support the motion, because if we want proper, affordable childcare, we need to look after the early years education. I actually meant to mention a lot of these childcare providers are only allowed to work 38 weeks a year. So they have to go off and go on the dole in July and August. So they can't get mortgages, they can't get loans, because they haven't got secure employment. So I would really urge you to spread the word on the Big Start campaign as well, and support the motion. Thank you.
I'll be a seconder for motion number 14, formally seconded. Have we a mover for motion number 15 in the name of Galway Oranmore branch? Galway West constituency. Have we a mover for motion number 16 in the name of Nina Branch?
Charlie McGee, Nina James Conley Branch. Conference calls on the Government to extend the ECCE scheme from 3 hours a day to 5 hours a day for working parents, including lone parents and guardians. The ECCE is a scheme designed to give children access to a free preschool year of appropriate programme-based activities in the year before they start primary school. This scheme was introduced in January 2010. Participation in a preschool programme, such as the one mentioned, provides children with countless benefits for their emotional and physical well-being and development. In many cases, this is their first formal experience of early learning, the starting point of their educational and social development outside the home. Children who avail of preschool are more likely to be ready for school and a formal learning and social environment. All children are entitled to 2 full academic years on the ECCE scheme, and the funding is provided directly to early years settings for children that they have registered on the ECCE scheme. The scheme is offered in early years settings, preschools, Montessori's, creches, playgroups for 3 hours a day, 5 hours a week, 38 weeks of the year. We feel that the hours offered to parents need to be extended from 3 hours a day to 5 hours to increase the benefits felt by the children themselves and their parents. Please support this motion.
Is there a seconder for motion number 16? Is it formally seconded? Thank you, Delegate. On motion number 17 in the name of Temple Oak Branch, Dublin South West.
For those of you with short memories, it's Pamela Cairns from the Temple Oak Branch, Dublin South West, who appears to be the only member of the Dublin South West branch available. Colleagues, again, this is in my comfort zone because it's in relation to childcare. And from my own personal experience, I have had a number of children, and they've all been actually boys. In the last 16 years, I've only had one little girl who had a learning problem, but I've had a number of boys, often as many as 3, who are on the spectrum, but they can't access the help because they can't get early diagnosis unless they're prepared to pay up to €800 privately. And a child isn't recognised as having a problem and can't get the support unless it has a proper assessment. So I really urge you to support this. We have to clear the backlog. These children are being put into primary school and they haven't got the coping skills because they haven't got the proper care at the age. Early intervention is key in childcare, absolutely key. I've witnessed it over the years. I had a lad last term, his parents paid to have a carer come in to the class and help him every day, and the improvement in that child was absolutely spectacular. And he went in, and he's in a special school now, but he can cope. When he came to me, he couldn't cope, but with the early intervention that he needed. But up to then, his parents had to pay to get the diagnosis, and then they had to pay to have private care come in to me every day. That is wrong. It is morally reprehensible. So I'd ask you to support this motion, delegates.
Owen Barry to second.
Hello, delegates. Owen Barry, Labour branch in Laois. I'd like to second this motion. I work in social work and child and adolescent mental health, so I'm on the other side of the service that Pamela provides. Too often we're seeing children that are now attending our service that should never come near us. So if a child is waiting up to 4 years for an autism assessment, their childhood is not on hold. They end up with different difficulties, things like anxiety, severe anxiety disorders. They can suffer from depression, and sadly they can also present with self-harm and suicidal thoughts. I very much support this motion. The Disability Act 2005 grants the parents of these children the right to this assessment. We need to start thinking about this. There's a patchwork system at the moment where the HSC provides some services, the disability service within the HSC can provide some service, ourselves and CAMS will provide another assessment, and then the private system provides an additional assessment. And all of this patchwork means a child can end up with files this full of assessment by the time they come to us, but nobody has done any treatment. And it ends up being an extremely inefficient system where children are getting assessment, but no actual intervention, no treatment, none of the kind of things that Pamela is talking about. For too long, we're not valuing the early childhood years, we're not valuing the staff that work in it. And I've heard all this talk about people in the Labour Party apologising for what we did in government. There seems to be no consequences for Fianna Fáil and the 2005 Disability Act, which was never fully implemented and never granted the intervention which was supposed to be part of the Act. I ask delegates to support this motion. Thank you.
Now, motions number 14, 16 and 17 are before the floor for debate. I'm calling on speakers. A number of people have indicated that they want to speak, yes? You're formally proposing number 13? Yeah, okay. What I was about to say, Joe, was that I will take movers on motion number 12 and 13 and 15 if members from the relevant branches can be found. Sorry, I'll take Joe first to move motion number 13. Sorry, it's motion number. It's okay, John. Motion number 13. Joe Costello.
Thanks, Chair. Joe Costello, Dublin Central. Delegates, this particular motion deals with early childhood care and early childhood education. And these are areas of greatest neglect nationally, and of course they're areas of greatest importance. And the figures speak for themselves. If you look at the 34 OECD countries, you find that Ireland is the second most expensive for childhood care, early childhood care and early childhood education of all those 34 for couples, and the most expensive for lone parents, for single parents. So quite clearly this motion speaks for itself, and it does mean that we as a country, we as a nation, and of course we as a party who have pushed this issue for a long time, that we must spend a lot more money in ensuring that our children, the children of the nation, are treated properly and that the finances are there to ensure that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So, is there a seconder for motion number 13? Formally seconded. So now motions number 13, 14, 16 and 17. Have we a mover for 12? Yes. Name? Conor Breen. It's formally proposed by Conor. Is there a seconder? It's formally seconded. So now motions number 12, 13, 14, 16 and 17 are before the floor. I saw, I think, 4 people indicating that they wanted to speak earlier. So, Mick, you want to speak? Yeah? Go ahead, Mick.
I want to agree on motion 17, early diagnosis, okay? Early diagnosis actually works. It helps people. It helps children to live a full life. And one of the things, again, Labour Disability agree on. But in my case, I got polio when I was 7 months old. I spent 3 years in Ballsbridge, what they call the industrial hospital, okay? Where they worked on me, got everything going, walking, my muscles and whatnot. So actually, I was able to live a full life, married, kids, mortgage and whatnot. Okay, I got the late effects of polio, but the fact is that I got that intervention at a very early age, helped me to live a normal life. So I would like you to support that motion, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Angela Timlin, Jack Fitzgerald Branch, Dunleary. Just like to say very briefly how important early diagnosis is for people with autism, children with autism. My youngest he's 32 now, and he has autism. And if he had had the early diagnosis, it would have been a very different story. In those days, they hardly even knew what autism was. In fact, if you said your child was autistic, people often thought you meant artistic, like good at painting. And he's in residential care in Wicklow. He's very happy. He's always been a brilliant person. But if he'd had that early intervention, it probably would have made all the difference. So it's really, really important. And I despair when I hear of parents day after day on the radio who can't even get any kind of care for their children at the moment and have them at home full time. So it's very unfair, and it's very important that resources are put in. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alison Galilan, Santa Kilmore in Dublin Bay North. I just want to speak generically about childcare, and actually it was the last bullet in motion 15, which I don't think has been proposed yet, that I really want to highlight. And it's that we develop a comprehensive proposal for state-led quality childcare provision that will support children, their parents and the workers. It's an area I'm really passionate about, and I think this is the next big policy area that our party has to address. We have a fabulous one on housing, which is the biggest, I suppose, financial burden that a lot of people have. Childcare is the next. And I think they are going to be two massive election issue ones. We need to show a vision for childcare, and to me that vision is public, universal childcare. It takes the financial burden of parents, and it also allows those who work in the sector to have proper remuneration, proper career prospects, pension entitlement. That it's almost like the primary school, which I work in, system, that parents can leave their kids there, know they're going to be properly cared for, have an education, they can go off to work, and they do not have a burden on them. So I don't know if it's appropriate that I move motion 15. No, that's okay. So I'm also, the other thing that I'm very conscious of is the precarity in our current workforce. And I think it was Task had a paper a few months ago that showed that people in precarious work are actually making life decisions about family based on their inability to afford childcare. And that's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison.
Good evening, delegates. Conor Sheehan, Thomond Branch, Limerick City North. I'm standing here before you just to speak in favour of motion number 14, in relation to the salary paid to to childcare workers. I'm not a childcare worker myself, but most of my best friends are, or should I say, were childcare workers, because the childcare sector it's really hemorrhaging workers, because when most of my friends, they went into childcare at 20, 21, 22, most of them with level 8 honours degrees. 6-7 years later, you're coming to your mid to late 20s, you want to start a family, you want to maybe look at buying a house, but you're still on €9.80, €10 an hour with no increments, and often in insecure work. And I mean, putting a child into childcare, it's, when you have a young baby of, 6 months, 9 months, a year, that's the most ultimate form of trust, leaving them with a childcare provider. And we really need to value our childcare workers and actually pay them a proper wage, so that we will have, more. Childcare workers are teachers. And I don't think teachers, whether it be teachers I know at primary or secondary level, would not tolerate working for years and years on €9.20, €9.50, €9.70, €10 an hour. So I urge you to support this motion.
Thank you, Conor. So now, are there any other speakers offering on these motions? No other speakers offering, so I invite the party spokesman, Deputy Sean Sherlock, to respond to the debate.
Míle buíochas, Cathaoirleach. I'll be very brief. There is nothing that I have heard so far in this debate that I would disagree with. I think we need to take a pragmatic and sensible approach, but we do have to start with incremental steps. And what I mean by that is that we can't have a situation now whereby the rate of attrition is what it is. It is far too high. So if you take the Big Start campaign, which is advocated by SIPTU, it's very pragmatic, based on common sense principles, that says that you need cost control for parents, you need a professional wage for workers, and you need certainty for providers. And so if you talk to Pamela and to Owen, people who are working in the front line of these services, they will give you, chapter and verse in relation to what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And there was an announcement in the budget of new income thresholds for the affordable childcare scheme, but when you read the fine print for budget 2019, they won't come into place until November 2019. So meanwhile, that's another year gone where people are out there who have a legitimate expectation based on the taxes that they pay that they're going to have an affordable childcare scheme that is fit for purpose. And why is it not up and running? Because the IT system and the infrastructure for IT is not created yet. So there are too many gaps in the system. I believe in the universality of a childcare system, but that needs to be absolutely and utterly costed. And looking around the room here, we all have bear testimony to the fact that our sons or daughters or brothers or sisters are paying way over the odds. There's a massive reliance now on parents and grandparents in relation to childcare, and so we do need to work towards a system that ensures that every child has access to an affordable scheme, and that is based on common sense principles. But in the meantime, I think we have to stem the tide. We have to stem the rate of attrition. And the only way you can do that within the sector is that you recognise the profession for what it is in terms of the standards that people within the sector have reached in terms of their own continuing professional development, and you pay them a commensurate wage with that to reflect their skills. And that's why we need a sectoral employment order for this, and that's the starting point. We need the sectoral employment order. If we can get the sectoral employment order, we can talk about the big ideas, the O'Malley idea of free a childcare system for everybody based on a universal system. But until we reach that point, we need to ensure that we can get the basics right in terms of ensuring that people have, a fair wage. No, we start with the premise that you at least ensure a living wage. I'm not saying that the living wage is the end point in all of that, but it is the starting point, and you move to pay scales, you move to professional wage structure. So that's on the basis that ensuring that the state investment then follows. And as has been said, we do need to move up to the EU average. We are way behind in all of that. And I don't understand the logic of creating a rainy day fund to the tune that they've created, because a fraction of that would go a long way towards ensuring that you create a professional wage structure for those within the sector. So I just want to speak also very briefly in relation to parental leave, because I think we have to start challenging Minister Catherine Zappone on some of the things that she's saying. I mean, it was announced that the parental leave would be put into place in budget 2019. We're now being told that it's now with the Department of Justice, and it mightn't happen until next year. So there are a lot of big announcements that are being made in relation to childcare, and we're now finding, once you go through the fine print, that they're not being implemented. And I think our job in government is to interrogate those decisions, which we are doing, and calling out government on them. So I wholeheartedly support the motions that are being put before us here tonight, and I commend the speakers who know better than I do what it's like to be a frontline worker. I'm a father of a child of 16 months. It's early days yet for me, but I think when you do become a parent, you realise exactly what it is that what people within the sector are going through, and what your cohorts are going through, and what grandparents are going through in relation to the challenges that are facing citizens, for want of a proper investment in something that could deliver a massive amount in terms of societal benefit and quality of life for people. And I think we need to start thinking in those terms, but I don't think the government is in that space, and that's what we need to keep challenging.
Thank you, Sean. So now we are going to vote on these motions. Again, I think they are non-controversial. So all agreed on motion number 12? Unanimity. All agreed on motion number 13? All agreed. All agreed on motion number 14? All agreed. Motion number 15 fell. Motion number 60, it wasn't moved. Motion number 16, all in favour? Agreed. Motion number 17, all in favour? Agreed. And now we're going to